Suge tried to destroy my record company with the help of others.
He had me look over the edge, show me how high I was up there.
You scared?
I needed to wear a diaper on that day. I was very scared.
Yo, what's good, everybody? They bailed him out of prison for $1.4 million. Looked like loyalty. But behind that handshake was a contract that would cost Tupac everything. 6 months later, he was dead in Suge's passenger seat. The street's been talking for decades, but now the rappers themselves are finally exposing the truth. Snoop Dogg. All right, fam. So we gotta kick things off with the Dogg father himself, Calvin Cortazar Broadus Jr., better known to the world as Snoop Dogg. Now look, this man wasn't just some artist at death row. Nah, he was literally one of the founding pillars of that whole operation, you feel me? When Doggy Style dropped in '93, that joint went quadruple platinum basically overnight. We talking about a young cat from Long Beach who was suddenly the face of West Coast gangsta rap, the voice of a whole generation of G's and homies who related to that smooth, laid-back delivery over them Dre beats. But here's the thing that most people watching MTV Cribs and seeing Snoop living lavish didn't understand. Behind closed doors at that death row compound, things was mad different from what the outside world was seeing.
When I was on Death Row Records, we made a lot of fucking money, but Suge Knight controlled it all. Everything was in his name. He distributed the money, he passed it out, he gave you what he felt you should have. We got a lot of money, but it may not have been what we supposed to have.
You hear that? Snoop laying it out plain as day. This wasn't no partnership. This was straight up control. And it gets deeper, fam.
All my cars was in Suge Knight name.
Wow.
Get pulled over, police. Yeah, Mr. Knight. Who? I'm not Mr. Knight.
Wow.
All my cars?
And that's how you found out?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Bruh, imagine being one of the hottest rappers on the planet, driving whips you think is yours, and then finding out during a traffic stop that you don't own nothing. That's not just bad business, that's some real snake behavior right there. Snoop accused Knight of creating a paranoid environment, ripping off artists financially, and fueling jealousy over Tupac's prominence. Now peep this, Snoop left Death Row in '97, and he ain't hold back neither. He dropped diss tracks like Pimp Slapped in 2002, where he straight up called Suge a BH and said he bought everything Suge owned. That's cold, but when you've been done dirty like that, can you blame him? But here's the wildest part. Despite all that smoke, these two actually sat down and worked it out. Snoop told the whole story of how it went down.
I had that wanted to write, they seen him before I did.
Right.
I had to tell them,
What you talking about?
let me holler.
Right.
So this is what I do. I say, when I finish with this little woo-wop I'm with, I'm gonna have my folks come down here and tell you what room I'm in.
And then Snoop broke down what actually happened in that hotel room.
And the whole conversation is, I loved you. I could have saved you. I had nothing but love for you. And his conversation was, love you. I ain't got nothing but love for you. Why did you try to get me pop when you loved me? You know what? I forgive you. I ain't gonna do nothing to you.
That's gangsta forgiveness right there. But make no mistake, the beef was real. Snoop's feud with Suge peaked after leaving Death Row with accusations of exploitation and threats. Even as recent as 2025, when Snoop acquired Death Row Records, Suge came out criticizing the deal and Snoop fired back with, "Shut yo up." The tension never fully went away, feel me? Now we gotta talk about the doctor himself, Andre Romel Young, better known as Dr. DRA. Yo, this man literally co-founded Death Row Records with Suge back in 1991, alongside the DOC and Dick Griffey. Without Dre's production genius, them G-funk synths, them hard-hitting drums, them melodic bass lines, there would be no Death Row sound whatsoever, period. Full stop. This cat produced The Chronic, which basically invented West Coast G-funk as a mainstream sound. Every producer after him was trying to capture what Dre created, but peep this, even though Dre was the co-founder, even though his fingerprints were on everything that made Death Row what it was, even he wasn't safe from the toxic environment that Suge cultivated. And yo, that says absolutely everything you need to know about how things were operating up in that piece.
Dre was scared too. I mean, it was all those guys, you know, I look at their videos and all that shit, they was all scared. You know, can't none of them say they wasn't scared. My whole thing about it is, you can't treat your artists like that. Why is you getting down like that? Why is you putting the fear in these guys like that? They work for you.
That's Mob James, who was literally inside Death Row, confirming what everybody suspected. Even Dr. Dre, the co-founder, was scared of the violent environment. Think about that. You built something, and now you scared to even be in your own building. That's crazy. And the violence wasn't just rumors neither.
You could walk in the door and get your ass whooped at death row. You could be sitting down and waiting to see Suge, and somebody come in, hide them, and they get their ass whooped. I mean, a lot of those guys that worked there was scared just to come to work because somebody might just come in here and whoop your ass.
Engineers and associates reported that Suge stripped Dre of creative control, despite the fact that Dre's production was Death Row's signature sound. Accounts say there were daily beatings in the studio, creating an atmosphere of pure terror. How you supposed to make classic music when you worried about catching fade every time you walk through the door? When Dre finally left in 1996, he did it through a letter because the situation was too volatile for a face-to-face conversation. Let that sink in. A grown man, a legend, had to write a letter to quit his own company because he feared for his safety. Dre bounced and started Aftermath Entertainment, which went on to sign Eminem and 50 Cent, building another empire. But he walked away from death row without receiving what he was owed, showing just how desperate he was to escape that environment. Knight later accused Dre of jealousy over Tupac's success, but real ones know the truth. Dre left because staying would have been a death sentence, figuratively, and maybe literally. Now we switching coasts real quick to talk about Marshall Bruce Mathers III, Slim Shady himself, the rap god from the 8 Mile Road. Eminem. See, Eminem's connection to this whole death row drama came through his mentor, Dr. Dre. When M signed to Dre's Aftermath Entertainment in '98, he unknowingly put himself directly in Suge Knight's crosshairs. Why? Because in Suge's mind, anybody affiliated with Dre after the split was automatically an enemy, and Dre was putting all his chips on this white boy from Detroit. And according to multiple sources who were in the room, Suge wasn't just sending subliminals or talking slick in interviews. There were actual alleged assassination attempts on Eminem's life. We're not talking hypotheticals or maybes. We're talking documented incidents where Suge's people allegedly tried to take M out. M's former bodyguard Byron Big Naz Williams detailed in his book how at the 2001 Source Awards, Suge's people approached them with threats, straight up saying, "Suge Knight sent us to strong-arm Eminem." Another alleged attempt happened in Hawaii around 1999 and 2000, targeting both Eminem and Snoop. Tony Yayo, 50 Cent's right-hand man, recalled the time Suge tried to intimidate them on the Inda Club video set, but Eminem, he stood 10 toes down. According to Yayo, M's response was simple: "I don't give a fuck. That's Detroit energy right there. Ain't no suburban kid behavior." Reddit users who researched the situation described Suge as a violent idiot whose gang affiliations made him dangerous. One commenter put it plain: he was associated heavily with gang members, and if you said some shit about him, he would have you killed. That's why even Dre, when M was coming up, reportedly warned him to be careful about dissing Suge directly. The beef between M and Suge never fully resolved. It just kind of faded as Suge caught case after case and eventually landed that 28-year sentence. But for years, Eminem was literally looking over his shoulder because of this man. Now we gotta take it all the way back to the foundation, to the concrete streets of Compton, California, and talk about a little dude with a big heart named Eric Lynn Wright, better known as Eazy-E, the godfather of gangsta rap. Eazy-E. See, Eazy-E and Suge's beef originated from when Suge helped extract Dr. Dre from Ruthless Records. And bruh, when I say extracted, I ain't talking about no polite business meeting with lawyers present. Nah, the story goes that Suge allegedly rolled up to Jerry Heller's office with a whole squad of goons. We're talking cats with lead pipes, baseball bats, the whole nine, and basically threatened Eazy and Heller until they signed the paperwork releasing Dre from his Ruthless contract. That ain't business negotiations. That's straight up extortion tactics, hood politics being applied to corporate affairs.
Suge tried to destroy my record company with the help of others, Dre. So right now we're getting everything back together and we finna come out, fully loaded.
Bruh, Eazy-E, a real street dude from Compton, wanted to personally handle Suge. Jerry Heller, Ruthless Records manager, had to talk him off the ledge. That's not regular industry beef. That's blood in blood, out type energy. And then there's the conspiracy theory that won't die. In 2003, Suge appeared on Jimmy Kimmel and made a joke that chilled the whole audience.
So they got this new thing out that people sell them all the time. They got this stuff they get blood from somebody with AIDS,
Yeah.
and then they'll shoot you with it.
Oh, so that
if
seems
don't happen,
bad.
That's
Yeah.
a slow death.
Yeah, yeah.
An Eazy-E thing, you know what I mean?
The audience gasped. Nobody thought that was funny. Rumors persist to this day about Suge's alleged involvement in Eazy's death, even though nothing was ever proven. But when you go on national TV and joke about a dead man's AIDS like that, you telling on yourself, whether you did it or not. Tupac Shakur. Pac. Tupac Amaru Shakur. What can you even say about this man that hasn't already been said 1,000 times over? He was undoubtedly the most talented, passionate, articulate, and revolutionary voice of his entire generation, a poet in the truest sense of the word, a prophet who saw what was coming and tried to warn us all. His relationship with Suge Knight remains one of the most complicated, controversial, and ultimately tragic stories in the entire history of hip-hop music. See, people gotta understand, before Pac linked up with Death Row, he was already one of the biggest names in rap. He had Brenda's Got a Baby, he had Keep Your Head Up, he had all these introspective records that showed the depth of his character. But he was also facing legal troubles, a sexual assault case that landed him in prison. And that's where Suge came in, like a knight in shining armor. Or was he a wolf in sheep's clothing?
I made a metamorphosis. I'm a new person today. Because I used to strongly and honestly, I feel like I could represent my generation so much because I honestly did not care whether I lived or died. But now, I cannot die with people thinking I'm or a criminal. I can't leave until this shit's straight.
Suge Knight bailed Tupac out of prison for $1.4 million in October 1995, signing him to death row in the process. On paper, it looked like loyalty. In reality, many believe Suge locked Pac into a bad deal, using him as a weapon in the East Coast-West Coast war, while allegedly underpaying him and holding back royalties.
I beg to differ. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting pimped. That's true. But, just like how a woman would be, you know what I'm saying? Anybody to be pimped. You know, it's like, it's not that you get pimped, it's how long you get pimped.
Even Pac himself acknowledged being used by the industry. Snoop later accused Suge of jealousy toward Tupac, claiming it up death row. And then, on September 7, 1996, after assaulting a Crips member named Orlando Anderson at the MGM Grand following the Tyson fight, Pac was shot in Suge's car on the Las Vegas Strip. Conspiracy theories, including accusations from Detective Russell Poole, have accused Suge of orchestrating Tupac's death over debts or planned label exits. Nothing was ever proven, but the questions never stopped. What we know for sure is that Pac's estate claimed millions were owed at the time of his death. The very man who saved him allegedly left him broke. Now look, I already know some of y'all might be sitting there like, Vanilla Ice? Word? You really putting him in a video about gangster rappers and Suge Knight? But hold up before you click away. This story right here is absolutely essential because it shows you exactly what Suge Knight was about from the jump. And this incident happened before Death Row even fully popped off and became the powerhouse that dominated the charts. Vanilla Ice. Robert Matthew Van Winkle, professionally known as Vanilla Ice, was riding high off the success of Ice Ice Baby, which had become one of the biggest songs of 1990. We're talking about a record that sampled Queen and David Bowie, went to #1, and made this cat from Dallas one of the most famous faces in pop music. And that's exactly what put a target on his back as far as Suge was concerned.
First time I met Suge Knight was at a restaurant in LA called Palm Restaurant. And I was sitting there eating, nice meal, and all of a sudden these huge guys who looked like a football team showed up. You know, it was very intimidating to see these guys. They were bigger than my bodyguards, you know, and a bunch of them. And they pretty much grabbed my bodyguard, pulled him out, and sat down next to me right there and started talking to me. How you doing?
Suge was tracking this man's movements like a straight-up predator. And then came the infamous balcony incident.
Suge took me out on the balcony, started talking to me personally.
On the balcony?
On the balcony.
High above?
Like 15 floors. He had me look over the edge, show me how high I was up there.
You scared?
I needed to wear a diaper on that day. I was very scared.
Suge allegedly dangled Vanilla Ice by his ankles off a balcony 15 floors up to force him to sign over royalties from Ice Ice Baby, royalties that Vanilla Ice claims were worth between $3 to $4 million.
The guy that Suge Knight brought over there that was an acquaintance of mine that had nothing to do with that song.
You signed over the rights?
Signed over the rights to him so that Suge and them could get paid for it.
So Mario Lavelle Johnson didn't write that song?
No way.
How much were those points worth?
About $4 million, $3 million, anywhere between there. $3 to $4 million.
And you just signed them?
Signed them and walked away alive.
The guy that Suge Knight brought over there that was an acquaintance of mine that had nothing to do with that song, signed over the rights to him so that Suge and them could get paid for it. So Mario Lavelle Johnson didn't write that song? No way. How much were those points worth? About $4 million, $3 million, anywhere between there. $3 to $4 million. And you just signed them? I signed them and walked away alive. Let that sit with you. This man signed over millions because he wanted to survive. Court records show a pattern of violence involving Suge. Assaults, beatings, pistol whippings. Vanilla Ice's story wasn't an anomaly. It was standard operating procedure. Now we gotta address the elephant in the room that's been stomping around this whole conversation. The infamous East Coast, West Coast beef that defined hip-hop in the mid-90s and ultimately cost us two of the greatest MCs to ever touch a microphone. And make no mistake about it, at the very center of igniting that whole coastal war was none other than Suge Knight himself, standing up at an awards show and throwing gasoline on a fire that would eventually burn out of control. The notorious B.I.G. and Diddy. Christopher George LaTorre Wallace, the notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls' Big Papa, was chilling in Brooklyn, running up hit after hit with Bad Boy Records. And Sean Puffy Combs, now known as Diddy, was building his own empire on the East Coast. They wasn't thinking about no beef with the West, they was just trying to make hits and stack paper. But Suge had other plans. At the 1995 Source Awards, Suge grabbed the mic and dissed Puff Daddy by saying, "Any artist out there that wanna be an artist, stay a star, and won't have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the records, dancing, come to death row." The crowd erupted in boos, and just like that, the Coastal War was declared. Many blame Suge for escalating tensions that directly contributed to both Tupac's and Biggie's murders. Though Biggie and Suge never met face to face, the Bad Boy versus Death Row rivalry turned deadly. A 2010 lawsuit by Biggie's family against Los Angeles that implicated Suge was dismissed, but the accusations never fully went away. Suge's rivalry with Diddy persisted for decades. Even from prison, Suge has made wild claims accusing Diddy of being an FBI informant and being involved in Tupac's death. Whether you believe those claims or not, the fact remains. Suge's actions in '95 set off a chain of events that cost the culture two of its brightest stars. Ice Cube. Now, O'Shea Jackson, better known to the world as Ice Cube, the original gangsta from South Central, who helped write some of the most iconic verses in hip-hop history, wasn't necessarily directly beefing with Suge Knight like some of these other artists were. But real talk, Cube was in a unique position because he had a bird's eye view of everything that went down. He had been there at the beginning with NWA. He had seen how the business side destroyed that group, and then he watched from the outside as Suge used similar tactics to build and eventually destroy Death Row. The DOC, who helped Dre escape Ruthless Records with Suge's aid, later shared how Suge's tactics mirrored the very problems they fled from, including violence that fractured NWA in the first place. It was like watching history repeat itself, but somehow even worse the second time around.
Let's just talk about what's going on in the hood. Let's just talk about what's going on around here. And if we just become neighborhood stars, that's good enough. That's better than what we are now, and so.
Cube knew what the streets were about, but the violence that surrounded Death Row was different. It was weaponized for business. Knight's role in NWA's breakup by poaching Dre created resentment that lasted for years. The whole West Coast scene was fractured by one man's need for control. Curtis James Jackson III is a whole different breed of cat, feel me? We're talking about a dude who grew up in the trenches of South Jamaica, Queens, one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in New York City during the crack era. 50 Cent. This man was out there hustling before he ever picked up a microphone, and more importantly, this man survived 9 gunshots at close range in 2000 and lived to tell about it. So when Suge Knight tried to intimidate him, 50 wasn't having it, not even a little bit. See, 50 Cent had already been through hell and back by the time he signed with Shady Aftermath. He had been shot, blackballed from the industry, had his face reconstructed from surgery. This cat knew what real street life was about. The theatrics that worked on other artists in LA. That energy didn't translate to Queens, and Suge was about to find that out firsthand. During the filming of the In Da Club music video in 2003, Suge showed up trying to flex. Tony Yayo recalled the situation. Suge tried his usual intimidation tactics, but 50 and his G-Unit crew stood their ground. You gotta understand, 50 Cent came from the trenches of Southside Queens. He wasn't no regular rapper scared of the big bad wolf. This incident tied into broader threats against Shady Aftermath artists, but 50's response was essentially, do what you gotta do. That energy, that refusal to bow, was rare in an industry where everyone knew what Suge was capable of. Uncle Luke. Most people in the younger generation completely forget about Luther Roderick Campbell, better known as Uncle Luke or Luke Skywalker. But this story right here is absolutely legendary and needs to be told because it shows that Suge's power wasn't unlimited. Sometimes the bully meets somebody who ain't scared, and that's exactly what happened when Death Row energy collided with Miami bass culture. See, Luther Campbell was the founding member of 2 Live Crew, one of the most controversial groups of the late 80s and early 90s. This cat fought all the way to the Supreme Court over First Amendment rights when Florida tried to ban their album. He wasn't no lightweight, he was a businessman, a provocateur, and he ran Miami like Suge thought he ran LA. So when Suge's entourage tried to bring that LA intimidation energy down to the bottom of the map, it didn't go according to plan. When Suge's entourage tried to intimidate Luke in Miami, Luke's crew allegedly beat them down. That's right, for once, Suge's people got served that exact same energy they had been dishing out to everybody else for years. Different city, different rules, different outcome. Luke's resistance earned him respect throughout the industry and proved that Suge's power had geographical limitations. He just preyed on people who couldn't or wouldn't fight back. When he ran into real ones who matched his energy, suddenly things were different. Yo, drop your thoughts in the comments. Which story hit you the hardest? And tap them cards on screen right now for more wild hip-hop stories you ain't gonna wanna miss.